Hello and welcome to InnoGrid TV in association with Engerati. I'm now joined by Ben Voorhorst, Vice Chair of ENTSO-E and Chief Operating Officer of Tenet. First of all, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for making the time to be here
Yeah.
and talking to us. And well, it's great to have you here because all the other interviews up until now have been on the DSO side. And at InnoGrid this year, a big theme is about integration, connections, and so on. And just to kick us off, I mean, from a TSO perspective, what do you see is needed in terms of the integration? And then we can dive deeper into some of the other issues. Yeah. But if you can just kick us off.
No, but I think in that respect, what is important in the integration is if we go to a system with high amount of renewables in a sustainable energy system, it's about integrating the demand and supply. And yes, the physics and the electricity flows through the grid, operated and maintained by the DSOs and the TSOs, but that's only the part of the physical part of it. In order to really have a real integration in the market, you see that the demand and the supply have to meet each other, and maybe storage in between to match that, and they have to become the active partners in the whole setting, and we have to make that possible on TSO level by giving the right signals to give the information, but also to really balance the system at all moments, but also giving the signals where do we see at a certain moments constraints or bottlenecks in order to achieve that.
And in terms of those signals, and again, I'm going to ask a simple question to allow you to give a more complex answer for our viewers. But you know, it seems to me that there are two things that are happening. There's, you know, on the distribution network, you're getting all sorts of actors on the grid edge that are producing, and they never used to before. And then on the transmission network, as that scales up, it brings a huge impact up to the transmission network. Are you starting to see the transmission network also start to engage with consumers a bit more than the distribution network used to?
What we see in the last decade, I would say that instead of having more or less one direction flows in the grid, that's already now changing. Changed a lot and will even change more depending on where are the sources for renewables, and if there is no wind, no sun, then still from other sources to be supplied with. So that kind of dynamics are already there in our grid. You cannot, in the beginning of the week, not predict what happens at the end of the week. So that kind of change is already there. What we see now is that also the amount of customers who are becoming active in the whole energy business is also increasing. In the past it were only the large consumers, but now the mid-size consumers are also quite active. And these days already for some products and for some innovation, we are already now dealing as TSOs with individual households combined by aggregators or suppliers, but that's, I think, already now the case. So these kind of things, yes, have also major increase for the TSOs.
And do you see that? And I'm picking on this customer engagement because it's one of the key aspects of the, you know, the clean energy package or the winter package as we used to call it. Are you seeing that you know, customers are starting to come in and act on the energy system without even intending to be players on the energy system because they want to buy an electric car? They think that's good, but they don't understand what that now means.
Yeah, but I think that should also be the case. Let's be honest, there are so many things in the world that you don't know and don't understand the world behind, and that should also be for the electricity and for and I think also for other related products, that it should be that easy of use for the customers that they feel it as a normal way of dealing with it. And that's, I think, also what will happen in the coming decades, that suppliers, instead of from historical reasons being suppliers of electricity, they will become suppliers of services to help the customers, so that the customers can act in the energy world without knowing exactly what they are doing, but just at least that is the idea we have, that they are just looking at what are my capabilities, and that is used by his supplier, by his aggregator, to use that in the energy system.
And then on the supplier of services side of things, I mean, if I can ask you to look a little bit ahead as well, how will that be manifested? Is it as simple that you as the TSOs and we had people in here talking about just opening up data and saying, okay, if we open up our data and we create an open data platform, the services will be built by people outside of our industry, because it's not. So the data layer becomes the engine for the potential app store.
Yeah. For sure, the data will be extremely important, but it's not only the data, it's also about the market rules in which are applicable for the suppliers and aggregators. Because they have to develop their new services based on one hand the data, which you need to do your business, to know how you have to respond on the signals the system gives, the market gives. But on the other hand, you have also to be able to develop your products. And I know for many things, for many products, they are still built on the framework of having big power plants and big consumers. And
that's not going to happen.
No, that's for sure. That's a change. And it means that we have to adapt the products for balancing service and all that kind of stuff. Also the rules to be applied by the suppliers. The interaction between aggregators and suppliers have to be further developed. So it's not only on the data, but also the market design which is needed for that.
And that was a big thing. I know when we had our call to prepare for the panel, you were saying that it's also about the market signals.
Yeah.
Every network, for want of a better word, needs to give the right market signals so that we can create this network of networks. What do you feel is needed? Because it's one of the things, and it's a shame we don't have the European Commission on our panel this afternoon. But what do you feel are the next steps that are needed? Because I know, in the clean energy package, I believe you were a co-author of a data report, and some of that was put in. But it's not. I get a sense by the industry that it's maybe not gone nearly far enough to fix that market issue. Would that be right, or I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, but I think that what we have done so far with the DSOs was a first step in describing what kind of data would be relevant and how to deal with it. But I think that this is only the first step. We have to make the next steps. We have to work together on it. We are working on it. But also we have to think about flexibility. How can the flexibility used? Also look at it from the customer perspective, because the customer at the end have flexibility at home. I mean, that can be consumers with an electrical car, with a solar panel, with an electrical boiler, with a heat pump, a battery, with whatever is relevant. So that have to be integrated, and we have to find solutions for that. Also the small and mid-sized enterprises. And we have to think about how can they act, how can they be helped by the suppliers, following what's going on in the grid, and not in the grid, in the system. So when is there an abundant amount of energy, when is there less, and how can that be brought together?
And I'm getting waved at, so I think we may be coming to the end of our time here. One of the other interviewees I had in here said that, look, it's all about economics. We've got to get the economics right,
exactly,
and then everything else will follow.
If it would be that easy, but it's about thinking about what are the right signals, and then the economical signals to give to the market. And I had lately a discussion with someone. He said, what for me is important, that was a new entrance, the market signals should be correct, because based on that I will invest. If I don't understand the market rules behind, the economics behind, then it will not fly, because at the end there should be a way that the customers can be helped by services which they like to have. And if that is not in place, then it doesn't work. So you have to think about what are the right signals you can give to the market, to the customers, what would they like, what not, what are their ability to steer their consumption and the load, and that would, to a great extent, would bring the next steps in the energy system.
So, final piece on this. It's just one of the things I do. I like reading random stuff, and I recently read Adam Smith's economic theory about how markets should really behave.
Yeah.
And one of his fundamental arguments is that in order for a market to be a true market, it actually needs less regulation rather than more regulation. Now, do you think there's some element of truth in here because of the other actors that are going? I'm not saying that there shouldn't be an anchor behind safety of supply and security of supply, but relax a little bit.
It's even, I would fully support that. The more easy to understand the rules are, the better the market is functioning. Because if you want to correct or prevent something, then you have to come up with additional rules and regulations. So if the basic rules of the market design are not correct, you have to add additional regulations. So if the core of your market design is correct, if it gives the right signals, and that means you can test that the right signals, if it is successful, is it still, you would apply the same rules? You can easily test on that one. And the other one is, if it is a critical situation in the system, then also are the rules still applicable? If that's the case, then let the market discover how to develop. So I think that fits quite well with the correct rules, and then as minimum as possible.
Perfect. And on that note, we leave it. Otherwise, I'm going to get really told off.
Okay.
Thank you very much for watching InnoGrid TV in association with Engerati. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you very much.